Ken Hodgson, and today's subject is going to be an encouraging one because the last four videos has been focused on more the negative side and dealing with fear and anger and depression. So I thought today we could talk on I could talk on hope, and so to get to that, I'm going to have to tell a little bit more of my story or repeat some of it, but a little more details. As you remember from the intro, that I was a pastor most of my adult life. In the last 10 years, I became a missionary and began to travel around the world. And the ministry I had as a pastor and as a missionary was a fairly intense ministry on reaching people that were abused or hurt. And then in missions, it was with police and military, government, and then eventually landed in the child trafficking for sex industry. Before I drove my life off the edge of the earth, that's what it felt like. I had a lot of hope. I lived a good life. I didn't abuse anything. Didn't really have any major sins that would caused me to have to step out of the ministry, either the pastorate or the mission field. And I helped thousands and thousands of people around the world and here in the U.S. And so it was difficult for me to be able to see that my life was beginning to fall apart. Again, not in the sense that you might think it, but in the sense of I couldn't sleep, I was hypervigilant, I was getting more depressed. A couple people around me noticed the depression, mentioned it to me. Inside I would say like, yeah, that's true, but it's nothing serious. I should be depressed a little bit because of all the things I'm involved with. And I was kind of a workaholic. I always had to be doing something for God and something for His people, no matter where I was at, on vacation, during my time after work. There was no after work for me. So there was this deep need to be good or to feel needed or to feel good of myself. And so there's another need that was very deep, a deep feeling of that I'm not good, that I was just not good. And it was so deep, those two things, I really couldn't see that shaping my adult life. So I blamed a lot of it on because I am dyslexic, and so growing up I really got teased a lot because I didn't speak correctly, I couldn't read right, I had a poor time in school, and I wasn't diagnosed till my first year in college, and then I started to deal with it, but it still plagues me today, and it's something I have to really work on. But that took a lot of the blame of my low self-esteem and never really looking at something that might be something deeper. Although, and this is part of my story, is that I knew I got molested as a kid. But in that period of time where I was being molested, I was also sexually assaulted. And it was a sexual assault that I was so horrible that I disassociated from and buried it. It was dead to me. That kid that went through that, locked up in a room like a secret cell, and was guarded. It never got out. And so that part of me stayed in that jail cell. And as I got into the ministry, I talked about being molested. I feel like I dealt with that. So I had no idea I was a walking time bomb. And then again, the ministry that I've been involved with was super intense and took a lot of risks throughout the years for people and to help people, and because I believed they could be helped. And then about a little over 3.5 years ago, and I got home from one of the countries I was in, I sat down in my front room and I just fell for days, about 2 weeks, but the first 2.5 days was super intense, just falling down into this dark hole, and my body got all weird and I just had to hang on and talked to my wife a little bit, told her, I feel like something's crawling around in my head, my skin. I couldn't stop it. And from there on, there was no denying, and it was shortly after, no denying that something was really wrong with me. And shortly after that, I went to a psychologist where I got diagnosed with complex PTSD. I went to another psychologist, not the same test, different test, but same conclusion. And then I ended up getting a really good counselor, who's a doctor in complex he's a doctor in psychology and specializes in complex PTSD. So for the first 2.5 years is when I worked on the adult traumas. Remember, complex PTSD is when someone suffers a childhood very traumatic experience and doesn't deal with it, and then suffers more trauma as an adult, and it gets layered on layers, so it becomes complex. So some of this may be not applicable to those who just have PTSD or those who just had child trauma, but I think there'll be some similarities, and so it was in those first 2.5 years that, as I dealt with the adult trauma, that I lost hope. I felt like God had left me. I couldn't feel power. I couldn't feel Him. I couldn't feel any of that. I went through periods of time where I wanted to die. I thought I was gonna die, and that I had thoughts of suicide, and they just came in my head, and so right now I want to pause here and say, if you're having thoughts of suicide, don't do it. Just don't do it. It's a lie. It's a trick. It feels like you're supposed to. It feels like that's the only way out, but it's a complete lie. Don't listen to it, and don't let evil dictate what you do with your life. Don't ever let evil try to win. You can defeat it. I'm defeating it. I've defeated the major part of it. I still have to work at things. I'm not claiming I got it all together or I got all the answers, but I beat death. I beat death, and I beat it ruining my life. And I'm beginning to put my life back together and begin to live again. So don't do it. And if you're not there yet and you're going, just remember those words: don't ever let evil defeat you. You defeat it, and you can't. There's hope. This is the message on hope. And so as I continue to work through my adult traumas, it took about 2.5 years. Those were the really dark days where I felt no hope, hopeless. I wasn't going to make it. And then as I got down to the childhood trauma, which I still hadn't remembered yet, but about a year ago, I was in the house where it happened, and I had my first flashback, and the counseling and everything changed after that, because it scared me so bad that I left that house and haven't been back since. And my life changed again. It didn't go into hopelessness, but man, it was, as far as what I've experienced, it's been much harder to deal with that childhood trauma than my adult trauma. So, but I had gotten to the place where I began to have hope again. I started to believe again. And one of the things for me that wasn't happening in the first 2.5 years was I didn't get a lot of encouragement. Most people didn't say anything to me, and there were some that were wanting me to do this or that, and I was trying to still work and do the job I've always done, and it just became harder and harder. But because I was in so much fear and so much shame during that first 2.5 years, it was really difficult for me to begin to let go of what I have done most of my life. So, and again, I shared in that for intro that it cost me almost everything, this whole complex PTSD. It has cost me almost everything. And so the other thing that was really bizarre as I went through these, I would call them 2 stages, the adult traumas and then my childhood trauma, that because most of my adult life I had been working with these types of people, and now I found myself as one of those people with no hope, covered in shame and guilt and fear and feeling like I've failed everybody. It was such a bizarre to have an intellectual knowledge, but experiencing or emotional, it was like it didn't do me any good to know all that stuff. Outside of the panic attacks, I have dealt with so many of those things that I knew I wasn't having a heart attack, although it mimicked one. And my panic attacks, really, I had them throughout the first 10 years, but this last year, I've had them continuously every day, night. They don't stop. They have recently let up, but they come back. It's just been a nightmare with that. But if you're going through hell, keep going. And you can get out of the darkest dark, and then it'll be a little lighter dark. There's so many stages that we're going to have to go through, you're going to have to go through, and I've gone through and still continue to go through. But I'm living proof that you can make it. And I, again, for me, there were times that God wasn't there, but He was there. I can see that now. He never left. I had to, and I was waiting for Him to rescue me. I was waiting for Him to go, bing, you're healed, and it didn't happen. And my physical pain mirrored my emotional pain in the last year. And so my physical pain through nerves has been, it's like I'm being tortured day and night between the panic attacks and my nerves hurting all over my body. It's been a living hell in a great respect. The other side of that, though, there's been life that's coming through here and there. I've made changes, lifestyle changes, and taking much better care of myself and being kind to myself. This is the other thing that I want to throw in here, is I was incredibly hard on myself. I had a standard of living that no one could have met. And so I was always constantly under condemnation of myself. I was my own judge. Very few people judged me. There are some that did, and always will be. But I judged myself so much harder than everyone else, and I began to see that in this last year. So don't judge yourself, and you got to give yourself a break. You have to be kind to yourself, and there is hope, and hopefully you are getting some of that hope right now. And